In the vast stretch of the galaxy, there were many species, each proud of their accomplishments and histories. But among them, humanity was seen as insignificant. The more advanced civilizations of the galaxy had long since established their place in the universe, leaving Earth as nothing more than a small, unnoticed speck in the dark expanse. Humans had mastered space travel, but only just. Their technology, while impressive by Earth standards, was primitive compared to the advanced systems the galactic empires had developed over centuries. To the aliens, Earth was a backwater world, far behind in science and military power. It was a planet where the inhabitants were caught in a never-ending struggle for survival, clinging to the hope that one day they could join the galactic community. But that day seemed far off. The other species, from the towering Shaltak to the sleek reptilian Surfians, laughed at the idea of humanity posing any kind of challenge. Earth had no true allies in the galaxy, no respected leaders, and no advanced weaponry to make it stand out. It was easy to ignore them until the day everything changed. Humanity had long been a participant in the Galactic Council, a body of powerful alien factions that governed the fate of the universe. But they were always the junior members, barely given a seat at the table. Even when they did speak, it was often ignored. Humans were dismissed as emotional creatures prone to unpredictability and irrational actions. The Council often debated whether Earth should be expelled entirely. But still, there was something about them, a spark that kept them around. That spark, though, had not yet been recognized by the others. They didn't understand that deep within humanity, there was an instinct buried under centuries of war and struggle. An instinct that, when unleashed, would prove far deadlier than any of the galaxy's most powerful forces. The tipping point came when an unknown alien fleet, the Vorath, descended upon Earth with intentions that were far from peaceful. The Vorath were a brutal and efficient race, feared across many systems. They were conquerors, and they had their sights set on Earth. The Galactic Council, ever so dismissive of humans, made no effort to come to their defense. They figured Earth would fall easily, just another planet to be swallowed up by the endless tide of war. They were wrong. In the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's leaders did not panic. Instead, they called upon their most experienced warriors and strategists. Among them was Captain Elena Roberts, a decorated officer who had spent years studying alien tactics. She had fought in countless skirmishes and had earned the respect of many, though not from the alien factions. To them, she was just another human, easily replaceable. But there was something about her approach to warfare that was different. She understood something the aliens didn't, the power of sheer will. And it was this unrelenting will to survive that would define humanity in the coming battle. As the Vorath fleet approached Earth's atmosphere, the humans made their first strike. The battle began in the cold vacuum of space, but the humans fought with a resolve that was almost alien to the invading forces. Elena's ship, the Vanguard, launched a surprise attack against the Vorath's flagship, using unconventional tactics that caught the invaders off guard. It wasn't just the technology that set the humans apart, it was the way they fought. They were not bound by the cold logic that guided the Vorath. They fought with heart, with something more primal, more dangerous. On the ground, the battle raged. The humans, armed with a mixture of advanced weaponry and sheer ingenuity, held their ground against the invading forces. But it wasn't just their technology that set them apart, it was their ability to adapt and improvise in the heat of battle. Where the aliens relied on precision, the humans relied on instinct. They were unpredictable. They used the terrain to their advantage, turning every building, every alley, into a weapon. The invaders were surprised, but it was not until they encountered Lieutenant James Carter that they truly began to understand the gravity of the situation. Carter was a former soldier turned mercenary, a man who had seen the worst of what war had to offer. He had an ability to survive, a killer instinct that was unmatched. His training had taught him to adapt to every situation, to find a way to turn the tables, no matter the odds. When he was deployed to eliminate a Vorath outpost, the result was nothing short of catastrophic for the aliens. Carter didn't use sophisticated weapons or strategies. He used his mind, his body, and his unyielding will to survive. He infiltrated their stronghold, taking down alien after alien with ruthless efficiency. But it wasn't just his physical prowess that shocked the Vorath, it was his mindset. The aliens began to realize that the humans were different. They weren't like the others they had conquered. The Vorath had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. The galaxy watched in disbelief as the humans, once seen as weak and insignificant, turned the tide of the battle. The once dominant invaders were forced to retreat. This victory was not just a military success, it was a wake-up call for the entire galaxy. The humans had proved that they were a species unlike any other. They had the ability to endure, to adapt, and to fight with a fury that none of the galaxy's greatest warriors could match. No longer could they be dismissed as weak or primitive. The galaxy had underestimated them for far too long. But this was only the beginning. As the humans celebrated their victory, there was a growing realization among the other species. Earth was no longer a backwater planet. It had become a force to be reckoned with. And soon, the galaxy would know the true power of humanity. The species that had once been laughed at now stood on the edge of a new era, one where they would no longer be underestimated. The laughter had stopped, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy had always been a place of unpredictable chaos, filled with power struggles and endless wars. Yet, within this sea of conflict, Earth remained a small, unassuming planet. For years, humanity had struggled just to be taken seriously among the great intergalactic empires. The other species saw the humans as weak, incapable of surviving in the harshness of space. They viewed Earth's inhabitants as little more than a curiosity, an experiment in survival. The humans had their place, but it was a far cry from the mighty powers of the galaxy. That was until the day everything changed. It all started when the alien faction known as the Vorath, a brutal and highly organized warlike species, set its sights on Earth. The Vorath had been conquering worlds for centuries, their empire expanding across the stars like a ravenous predator. When they arrived in the solar system, they found nothing but a primitive species standing in their way. Their scouts laughed at the idea that such an insignificant planet could put up any real resistance. To them, Earth was just another target, another world to add to their growing empire. The Galactic Council, a body of powerful alien civilizations, did nothing. They had long since written off humanity as irrelevant. Earth was alone. Captain Elena Roberts, a military leader of extraordinary skill and resolve, had seen the signs of an impending threat. She had been studying the Vorath for months, analyzing their tactics and their strength. Despite the lack of support from the Galactic Council, she knew humanity's survival depended on one thing: their ability to adapt. The Vorath had underestimated the humans, and that was their fatal mistake. Elena gathered a team of elite soldiers, each one chosen for their strength, intelligence, and resilience. Together, they were determined to defend Earth, even if they were outmatched in every way. The day the Vorath attacked, Earth's defenses were overwhelmed almost instantly. The Vorath came in waves, their ships raining down destruction from the sky. The humans fought back with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. Cities burned, and the death toll climbed higher with every passing hour. It seemed like humanity was doomed, and yet, in the face of certain defeat, something extraordinary began to happen. The human soldiers, led by Elena, did not break. They did not surrender. In the chaos of battle, the soldiers began to fight with a fury that no one expected. It was as if something had awakened inside them. The heart of the human resistance was Lieutenant James Carter, a soldier with a reputation for being a ruthless fighter. Carter was known for his unconventional tactics and his ability to adapt to any situation. But when the Vorath arrived, no one could have predicted what would happen next. Carter was not just fighting to survive, he was fighting for something deeper. It was as though the brutality of the Vorath had triggered something primal inside him. As the battle raged on, he became more and more unstoppable. His team followed his lead, and together they became a force that no one had seen coming. But it wasn't just the soldiers who felt the change. Elena, who had always been calm and calculated, began to tap into something she had never known existed within herself. She could feel the raw power of the human spirit pushing her forward. She could see it in the eyes of her soldiers, the fire of determination burning brighter with every minute. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something far greater, a chance to prove that humanity was not weak, that they were a species worthy of respect. As the days went by, the Vorath began to feel the sting of human resistance. The once confident invaders were starting to lose ground. Their soldiers, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer force, began to falter. They couldn't understand what was happening. Why weren't the humans backing down? Why were they fighting with such intensity, with such a deep hunger for victory? The Vorath had never encountered anything like this before. It was during a critical moment in the battle that Carter became the catalyst for humanity's survival. The Vorath had positioned their most powerful warship over Earth's capital, ready to destroy everything. The situation seemed hopeless. The human forces were scattered, and the Vorath had superior numbers. But Carter, with his uncanny ability to think on his feet, devised a plan that no one else could have imagined. He led a small team on a daring mission to infiltrate the Vorath flagship, a ship so heavily guarded that it seemed impossible to breach. But Carter was determined. He knew that the survival of humanity rested on this one act. He and his team snuck aboard the ship, using stealth and the element of surprise to their advantage. As they moved through the corridors, they encountered fierce resistance from the Vorath forces. But Carter and his team fought back with a savagery that caught the aliens off guard. It wasn't just their military training that made them dangerous. It was their refusal to back down, their willingness to fight until the very end. As they reached the core of the ship, Carter made the ultimate decision. He would destroy the Vorath flagship by triggering a chain reaction in the ship's engines. It was a sacrifice, but it was the only way to save Earth.in that moment. As the countdown to the destruction of the flagship began, Carter knew that his actions would send a message to the galaxy. The Vorath were a formidable enemy, but they were not invincible. The galaxy's greatest civilizations had underestimated humanity for far too long, and now they would learn the truth. Humans were not to be ignored. They had the strength to survive, the will to fight, and the heart to stand against anything that threatened their existence. When the flagship exploded, the shockwave sent a tremor through the galaxy. The Vorath were thrown into disarray, their forces crumbling in the wake of the destruction. The human resistance had won a decisive victory, but more importantly, they had proven something to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer a species to be overlooked. They had become the catalyst for a change that would reverberate across the stars. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council was forced to take notice. The humans had not only defended their planet, they had struck fear into the hearts of the galaxy's most powerful empires. They had proven that no matter how small or insignificant a species might seem, there was always the potential for greatness hidden within them. The catalyst had been the spark that ignited the fire of humanity's strength. And that fire would burn brighter than ever before. The galaxy had never taken humanity seriously. To the aliens, Earth was just another small, insignificant world with primitive life forms. They believed humans were nothing more than another species with fragile bodies and primitive technology, doomed to be consumed by the vastness of the universe. For centuries, humans were looked down upon by the powerful empires that ruled the stars. But all that changed the day they faced the first human killer, a weapon so powerful that it would reshape everything they knew about humanity. It all began with an invasion. The Rethar, a highly advanced alien race known for their ruthless conquests, arrived in Earth's orbit, determined to enslave its people. The Rethar were feared across the galaxy for their superior technology and devastating firepower. They had wiped out countless civilizations in their quest for dominance, and Earth seemed like another easy target. Their warships, massive and menacing, descended toward the planet, and the humans had no choice but to defend themselves with the little they had left. They knew their chances were slim, but they fought with everything in them, unwilling to let their world fall without a fight. Among the chaos of the battle, a secret weapon was unleashed, something that the Rethar had never expected. For centuries, humans had struggled to develop advanced weapons that could match the might of their alien enemies. But what the Rethar didn't know was that humanity had been working on something far more dangerous than they could ever imagine. It wasn't a weapon of mass destruction or a fleet of warships. It was a single human soldier. The first human killer was Sergeant David Harper, a man who had volunteered for an experimental program designed to enhance human abilities beyond what was thought possible. The military had been working on genetic modifications, capable of taking on even the most powerful alien adversaries. David was one of the first subjects in the program, a volunteer who believed that humanity's future depended on pushing the limits of human potential. What they didn't know, however, was that David's enhancements would make him something more than just a soldier. They would turn him into a force of nature. David's body had been altered at a molecular level. His reflexes were faster than any human's, his strength nearly unmatched, and his endurance limitless. His senses were heightened to a point where he could track an enemy's movements by the slightest shift in air pressure. But it wasn't just his physical abilities that made him dangerous, it was his mind. The enhancements had unlocked something inside him, a deep well of untapped aggression and cunning. When the Rether landed, David was one of the first humans sent into combat, but none of the aliens were prepared for what he could do. The first time David engaged the Rethar, it was nothing short of a massacre. With a precision and brutality that stunned both his comrades and his enemies, he tore through the alien forces. He moved with an unnatural grace, striking down opponents with a speed that left them unable to react. His combat tactics were so advanced that even the Rethar, who had fought in countless wars, couldn't comprehend how a single human could be so lethal. Each kill was methodical, calculated, and efficient. His movements were more like a predator hunting its prey than a soldier fighting a battle. The Rether commanders quickly realized that they were not facing just another human soldier. This wasn't a typical human resistance fighter. David Harper was something new, something terrifying. He had become the first human killer, a living weapon that was beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. The Rethar, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer numbers, began to panic. They tried everything to stop David, but no matter what they did, he was always one step ahead. His senses were too sharp, his reflexes too quick, and his combat style too unpredictable. The more the Rether tried to contain him, the more they realized they were up against something they couldn't defeat. David didn't stop with the Retherfoot soldiers. He hunted down their leaders, their strategists, and their most powerful warriors. He infiltrated their strongholds, taking them out one by one, leaving behind only destruction. The Rether's war machine, which had once been unstoppable, began to crumble. Their morale shattered as they realized that they were being hunted by a single human, a killer unlike anything they had ever encountered. David became a legend, not just among the humans who cheered him on, but across the galaxy, as rumors of the first human killer spread like wildfire. But even as David's fame grew, so did the pressure on him. The more the Rether attempted to destroy him, the more the human military demanded of him. He was pushed to his limits, both physically and mentally. The enhancements that made him the perfect soldier were also slowly eroding his humanity. As he killed more and more, a dark side began to emerge within him, an insatiable hunger for battle that threatened to consume him entirely. David knew that if he didn't find a way to control the monster within him, he might become as dangerous as the enemies he was fighting. As the war dragged on, the Rether began to adapt to David's tactics. They developed new technologies to counter his enhanced abilities, including weapons designed specifically to neutralize him. But David was always ready. Every time they thought they had him cornered, he found a way to escape or strike back with even greater force. His single-minded determination was both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. He couldn't stop. He wouldn't stop. The idea of failure was simply not in his nature. In the final confrontation, David faced the Rethar's supreme leader, a creature so terrifying that even the other Rethar feared him. The battle was fierce, with the two combatants matching each other blow for blow. But David, driven by the fear of losing control, knew that this was the moment that would define not only his life but the future of humanity. With a final, desperate push, he killed the Rether leader, ending the war and sealing his place in history as the first human killer. In the aftermath, the galaxy would never be the same. The Rether, once the most feared empire in the universe, were crippled by the loss of their leader and their military strength. Humanity, once seen as weak and insignificant, had proven that they were capable of anything. They had created the first human killer, a living weapon that had changed the course of the galaxy forever. And though David Harper's name became a symbol of fear and respect, it also served as a reminder to all the other species that humanity, for all its flaws, was a force that could no longer be ignored. The universe had always seemed vast and impersonal to humans, a cold expanse filled with countless stars, galaxies, and alien races. For centuries, humanity had lived in the shadows of the more advanced species, content to explore and learn, but never to disrupt the established order. Earth, their home, was a small speck in the grand scheme of things, and for the most part, humanity had accepted their place in the universe until the moment they unknowingly set off a chain of events that would forever change the balance of power. It started with a seemingly innocuous experiment. Dr. Laura Richards, a brilliant human scientist, had been working on a project to manipulate energy in a way that had never been attempted before. Her goal was simple: harness energy in a form that could power entire starships without the need for traditional fuel sources. She believed it was the key to unlocking humanity's future in space exploration. But as often happens with such groundbreaking discoveries, things didn't go as planned. One day, as Laura activated the experiment, something extraordinary happened, something beyond her comprehension. A wave of energy surged through the lab, flashing across the stars, its ripple spreading outward across the galaxy. At first, there was no immediate sign of what the wave had caused. The experiment was abandoned as a failure, and Dr. Richards was left to ponder what had gone wrong. But then strange things began to happen. Alien species, previously indifferent to humanity, began to take notice. Empires that had once ignored Earth now started to monitor its movements, their interest growing with each passing day. The ripple from Laura's experiment had unknowingly sent a signal into the fabric of the universe, a signal that had drawn the attention of forces that humanity had no understanding of. It wasn't long before the first ships arrived. The Vranok, a technologically advanced alien race that had been observing humanity from afar, made their presence known. They had been aware of Earth for centuries, but until now, they had dismissed the humans as inconsequential. However, the ripple had changed everything. The Vranok were curious, intrigued by the disturbance they had felt across the stars. The humans, who had never before attracted the attention of such a powerful species, found themselves caught in a web of unknowns. But the ripple didn't stop there. As the Vranok arrived, they brought with them an alliance of other alien races, each one more powerful and enigmatic than the last. The Ilgar, with their ability to manipulate time itself, the Drathel, whose weapons could shatter entire planets, and the Zern, a race of telepaths who could read minds from light years away. All these species had felt the energy from Dr. Richards' experiment, and they all shared the same question: what did humanity know? How had they unlocked such power? The humans, initially caught off guard by the sudden attention, found themselves plunged into a diplomatic nightmare. Their governments were scrambling to form alliances, trying to understand what had just happened. But the problem was, no one knew what had actually occurred. Dr. Richards, despite her expertise, couldn't answer the questions that the alien leaders were asking. She had unknowingly triggered a series of events that no one had foreseen. The ripple effect had set off a chain reaction of curiosity, suspicion, and fear, not only among humans, but among the most powerful species in the galaxy. Tensions began to rise as the Vranok and their allies demanded answers. They had no intention of allowing a primitive species like humanity to hold secrets that could potentially threaten the balance of power. The human governments, already overwhelmed, could only try to stave off the demands of the alien races, but it was clear that humanity was at the center of something much bigger than themselves. It wasn't just the attention of powerful species they had gained, it was the power itself. The ripple had created a new reality, one in which humanity had become a key player in the cosmic game, whether they wanted to be or not. Dr. Richards found herself at the heart of the storm. The aliens had no interest in her motivations or her innocent intentions. They wanted to understand how a species so young and inexperienced had triggered something so powerful, and they weren't prepared to take no for an answer. As the weeks passed, the situation grew more tense. The human governments began to negotiate with the aliens, offering resources and technology in exchange for peace. But the aliens weren't interested in treaties or trade. They wanted control. They wanted to understand the source of the ripple, and they were willing to go to any lengths to obtain it. What the humans didn't realize was that the ripple had not only drawn the attention of powerful empires, but it had also caused something else, something darker. As the Vranok and their allies converged on Earth, an ancient force, long dormant, began to stir. Deep within the fabric of space, something had awoken in response to the ripple, a force that had been hiding in the shadows of the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to strike. This ancient force was the Exaltha, a forgotten race of beings so old and powerful that no one even remembered they existed. The Exaltha had once ruled over the galaxy, but their reign had ended in a cataclysmic war with the other alien species. They had been wiped out, or so it was believed, but the ripple had disrupted their slumber, and now they were coming to reclaim what they had lost. Their first target? Humanity. As the alien forces gathered around Earth, the true scale of the ripple became clear. What had started as a simple experiment had unleashed something far greater than anyone had expected. The fate of humanity now rested in the hands of the very species that had once been dismissed as insignificant. Dr. Richards, the unknowing architect of this cosmic disaster, had no idea what she had started. The ripple effect had changed everything, and now humanity was faced with a choice: to fight for survival or to surrender to the forces that had been awakened. In the final moments before the Exaltha arrived, the human race had only one option left: unite. Their differences, their fears, and their doubts had to be set aside if they were to face this new threat. The ripple effect had thrown them into a new era, one where their future depended on their ability to confront the unknown and stand against the forces that would see them wiped out. The war for the future of humanity had just begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the distant future, humanity had spread across the stars, colonizing planets and faraway systems, driven by a desire to explore and expand. Despite the vastness of space and the many alien civilizations they encountered, humans were often seen as nothing more than an afterthought, weak and unremarkable compared to the ancient, powerful species that dominated the galaxy. But no one had counted on the one thing that would change everything: humanity's unyielding will to survive and adapt. It all began when the first human colony, Centauri II, was attacked by a mysterious alien species. The alien race, known as the Zyks, were relentless in their assault, possessing technology far superior to anything humanity had developed. Within days, Centauri I was under siege, and it seemed like nothing could save the colony from certain destruction. Governments from across the human territories scrambled to provide aid, but their military forces were outmatched and their weapons ineffective against the Zyks' advanced technology. People began to lose hope, and fear began to spread among the colonies. But humanity had one thing that no other species could easily understand: resilience. While the galaxy's powerful civilizations took their dominance for granted, in the depths of Centauri II's darkest hour, an unlikely hero emerged. Captain Marcus Reynolds, a decorated officer in the Colonial Defense Forces, was leading a group of soldiers in a final stand. But unlike the rest of the military leadership, he wasn't content to simply fight to hold off the inevitable. Instead, Marcus began researching the Zyks' technology, determined to find a way to use it against them. His people had been underestimated for far too long, and he knew they could turn the tide. For weeks, Marcus worked tirelessly, decrypting alien data and reverse engineering weapons that the Zyks used. It was dangerous work. Many of his team members had perished during the process, either from exposure to the Zyks' weapons or from the strange alien technology they tried to replicate. But Marcus was relentless. Every setback only fueled his determination. He knew that if humanity was to have any hope, he had to succeed. The Zyks were strong, but the one thing they didn't understand was human ingenuity. Finally, Marcus succeeded. Using the Zyks' own weapons against them, he led a daring counteroffensive, hitting their supply lines and causing chaos among their ranks. The Zyks, who had once thought of humanity as little more than insects to be crushed, were thrown into disarray. Marcus's tactics were unpredictable, and his ability to think outside the box left the Zyks scrambling to maintain control. In a matter of weeks, Centauri II was liberated, and the Zyks were forced to retreat. The victory was monumental, not only for the survival of Centauri II, but for humanity's reputation across the galaxy. For the first time, the powerful alien species saw humans in a different light, not as weaklings, but as a force to be reckoned with. The Zykes had underestimated humanity's resilience, and they had paid the price. News of Marcus's victory spread like wildfire through the colonies, and humans everywhere began to believe that they could face any threat, no matter how overwhelming. But the Zyks weren't the only ones watching. The galactic powers that had long considered humanity insignificant began to take notice as well. The powerful Ilgar, who could manipulate time itself, and the Drathal, with their ability to create weapons capable of destroying entire planets, now saw humanity as a potential rival. Their arrogance had kept them from considering humanity as a real threat, but now the humans had proven that they could stand toe-to-toe with the most advanced species in the galaxy. The question was no longer whether humans could survive. It was whether they would rise to claim their place as one of the galaxy's dominant powers. As the years passed, humanity's presence continued to grow. The humans, once a small and insignificant species, had begun to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. They joined alliances with species they once had nothing in common with, and together they formed a powerful force that began to rival the older civilization. The legacy of Marcus Reynolds lived on, not only in the technology he had unlocked, but in the attitude he had instilled in his people, the belief that no challenge was too great and no enemy too powerful. But the galaxy was not without its dangers. As humanity's influence spread, so did the enemies who saw them as a threat. The Vranok, an ancient and ruthless race, saw the rise of humanity as a direct challenge to their supremacy. They believed that only they had the right to rule, and they would stop at nothing to eliminate the threat posed by the humans. They sent spies and assassins to infiltrate human colonies, using their advanced technology to sabotage humanity's expansion. The attacks were swift and brutal, but the humans, once again, did not break. Instead, they fought back harder, rallying around the idea that their legacy built on resilience, resourcefulness, and unyielding strength was unstoppable. One of the most significant moments in the war between humanity and the Vrank deployed their most devastating weapon, a massive fleet of warships designed to wipe out entire planets. The Vranok believed that with their overwhelming firepower, they could finally crush humanity once and for all. But Marcus Reynolds, now an age legend, was still alive. And he knew that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in numbers or firepower. It was in their ability to adapt. The human fleets, though outgunned, used their ingenuity to turn the tide. They struck from unexpected angles, using the Vranok's own weapons against them, and turned the tables in a way the Vranok had never anticipated. The humans had become so skilled at adapting alien technology that they were able to overcome the Vranok's most formidable defenses. Slowly but surely, humanity began to win the war. The Vranok, who had once thought of themselves as invincible, found themselves on the defensive. As the Vranok retreated, humanity's victory sent a shockwave through the galaxy. The message was clear: humanity would no longer be underestimated. Their legacy of survival, their determination to adapt and rise above, was unstoppable. What had begun as a simple fight for survival had evolved into a legacy that would shape the future of the galaxy. Other species watched in awe as humanity, once thought weak and insignificant, became a powerhouse of innovation, strength, and unity. The ripple